5,000 men marched into the Amazon because of lines drawn on paper, and the mountains those lines depicted did not exist. The cartographer who drew the map had never been to the Amazon. He extrapolated from incomplete expedition notes and filled the gap with mountains that seemed logical. The Phantom Mountain Range was drawn with perfect professional confidence, neat triangular peaks. A river valley labeled as a route, the kind of map detail that generals trust without question. In the strategy room, the general's finger traced the route through the mountain pass, a route that existed only on the map, invisible to anyone who had actually walked that jungle floor. From above, the truth was clear. The Amazon in that region was flat. Wet jungle floor, not a single ridge, not a single peak, nothing that matched the mountains drawn on the map. The commanding officer had complete faith in the map, because maps printed by official cartographic services were never wrong, had never been wrong in his experience, and he saw no reason to doubt this one. 5,000 men assembled at dawn, the largest military expedition the region had seen. Equipped, provisioned, and ordered to march toward a mountain pass that would not be there when they arrived. Every soldier carried a personal copy of the map, the Phantom Mountains folded neatly in their breast pockets, tucked against their hearts. The column entered the jungle and the jungle closed behind them, 5,000 men swallowed by the canopy. The last sunlight disappearing as the trees took them in. The Amazon floor that the map had shown as a green wash between mountains was, in reality, the most hostile terrain any of these men had ever encountered. The compass pointed the correct direction, but the map's terrain features began to fail to match reality within the first day of the march. By the end of the first day, the mountains that should have appeared on the horizon had not, and the commanding officer ordered the column to continue, certain the map simply required recalibration. The jungle floor in that season was flooded, the soldiers wading through black water that the map had shown as dry ground, every step costing 3 times the energy of a march on open terrain. Machete teams worked in rotation, cutting a path that closed behind them within hours as the jungle simply grew back, indifferent to human passage. The supply wagons began failing within 3 days. The jungle floor that the map had indicated as passable was destroying both the wheels and the animals. The Amazon canopy reduces midday light to a permanent gray twilight, a psychological pressure that compounds every physical hardship the jungle imposes. Wounds that would heal in days in any normal environment became infected within hours in the Amazon, the humidity and bacteria making every cut and abrasion a medical crisis. At night, the Amazon takes everything. The darkness is absolute. The sounds are unfamiliar, and 5,000 men become 5,000 isolated individuals. On the 4th night, a junior officer formally raised the possibility that the map was wrong, and was quietly told that the map was official and the column would continue. The supply calculations that had been precise on paper were becoming a source of growing dread. The column had consumed provisions for 4 days and covered the distance of 2. The great irony of the Amazon is that water is everywhere and clean drinking water is almost nowhere. The rivers run dark with tannins and the men began falling ill. By day 6, the column was already fragmenting, the jungle's resistance stretching the formation until units lost contact with each other in the canopy's permanent twilight. The first soldiers died of fever and infection, buried in graves that the jungle would consume within days. The column marching past before the last prayers were spoken. Officers began annotating the map with pencil marks, circling features that didn't match, adding question marks, the document slowly being revealed as fiction written in official ink. A local guide told the officers flatly, "There are no mountains in this direction. There have never been mountains here." And the officers chose to trust the map over the man who had lived in this jungle his entire life. The commanding officer had to maintain absolute certainty in front of 5,000 men because the moment his certainty broke, the column would break with it. The scouts returned with a report that could no longer be denied. 3 days ahead, there were no mountains, only more jungle in every direction, to the visible limit of any human sightline. He chose to continue because turning back meant admitting that the map was wrong, that the campaign was based on fiction, and that every death so far had been for nothing. The sunk cost trap is one of the most lethal forces in military history, the logic that says we have invested too much to stop, even when stopping is the only rational choice. By day 10, the column had abandoned a third of its heavy equipment, the soldiers carrying only what they needed to survive, which was less than they had started with. The rations that were meant to sustain 5,000 men to the mountain pass and beyond were nearly gone, and the mountain pass was nowhere to be found. The first murmurs of mutiny came not from cowardice, but from mathematics. The junior officers had done the calculation and understood that forward was death. The Amazon's true weapons were invisible, disease moving through the exhausted column faster than any physical enemy could. Some soldiers understood before the officers admitted it. The map was wrong. The mountains were a fiction, and they were marching into the center of the Amazon with no exit strategy. They reached a wide, black river that the map did not show. The map had drawn land where there was water, a fundamental geographic error compounding the already catastrophic mountain fiction. Crossing the unmapped river cost 3 days, a significant portion of the remaining supplies, and dozens of men to drowning and the river's predators. An officer crossed out the Phantom Mountains with a single pencil stroke, the erasure of everything the expedition had been sent to find. The Amazon is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth, and one of the hardest places to find food if you don't know specifically what to look for and where. The formal admission spoken aloud in a briefing tent deep in the Amazon was that the map was in error and the mission objective did not exist. He wrote the communique in precise military language, but between every line a failure was visible to anyone who knew what they were reading. The retreat was ordered, but the jungle the column had marched through had already healed behind them, and men who were barely walking forward now had to find a way back. Men stopped to rest and did not rise again in the column. Too exhausted to stop, had to march past them and leave them to the jungle. Command collapsed in the Amazon's depth, the jungle's pathlessness and darkness separating officers from their men until each soldier was navigating alone. The column splintered into disparate factions, each group following whoever seemed most likely to find the way out. The military hierarchy replaced by the pure hierarchy of survival. Soldiers were found dead, still clutching their maps, the documents that had led them into the jungle, pressed against the bodies of men who had trusted them completely. Some soldiers held their maps up to the faint jungle light, staring at the phantom mountain range as if intense enough scrutiny might make it real. Some soldiers destroyed their maps in fury, tearing the phantom mountains to pieces, an act of futile rage against the paper that had sentenced them to die. The river exit that the map showed just beyond the mountain pass was being pursued by dying men who believed it was always just one more day ahead. Soldiers wrote letters that would never be sent, their own accurate maps of what had happened, folded beside the official map that had made it happen. From outside the jungle, the 5,000 men had simply disappeared, absorbed by the canopy, their fate unknown for weeks to those waiting at the expedition's origin. The senior officer died still ordering men to reach the river exit, a destination that existed only on the map that was killing them. Some survivors found a real river, not the one on the map. Not where the map said a river would be, but a real river found by the random luck of exhausted men too tired to march in a straight line. The first survivors emerged from the jungle weeks after the column had entered alone, or in small groups, reduced to a fraction of the men who had marched in. The survivors were counted over weeks as they emerged, and the final number was a fraction of the 5,000 who had entered. The difference accounted for by the phantom mountains. The jungle kept its dead. No search party could find the bodies, the graves, or any trace of 5,000 men who had marched into the Amazon and not come back. The map was formally identified as the primary cause of the catastrophe, the phantom mountain range circled in red ink by an investigator. Months after the men who trusted it were dead, the cartographer had not lied. He had made an honest professional error, extrapolating from incomplete data, but the consequence of his error was indistinguishable from a deliberate act. The survivors' testimonies were consistent. The map was trusted, the mountains were expected, and when they didn't appear, the institutional decision was always to continue rather than admit the map was wrong. The Amazon does not remember it digested 5,000 men without ceremony, without record, without the faintest disturbance to its ancient cycles. The map was filed in an official archive, a routine administrative act that placed an instrument of mass death alongside routine government paperwork. The formal inquiry asked the questions that should have been asked before the expedition departed. How was this map verified? Who checked the cartographer's sources? Who confirmed the mountain range existed? The answer was, nobody had verified the mountain range's existence before sending 5,000 men to find it. The map's official appearance was treated as its own verification. The professional standard for cartographic verification required cross-referencing multiple sources, consulting local knowledge, and confirming major terrain features through independent observation, none of which had been done. 5,000 families waited for news, and most of them waited for the rest of their lives, their sons and husbands and fathers leaving no trace in the jungle that consumed them. Modern satellite mapping of the same region shows exactly what local people knew in 1800. Flat jungle floor, river systems, no mountains. The truth that was always there, unverified. The same failure mode operates today. We follow GPS routes into lakes. Medical algorithms make incorrect diagnoses. Financial models collapse entire economies, all because we trusted the data's appearance over its verification. Researchers navigate the same jungle today with GPS precision. The difference between their survival and the soldier's death is the difference between verified data and trusted fiction. The cartographer was working from fragmentary sources under institutional pressure to produce a complete authoritative map. The phantom mountains were the product of professional pressure meeting insufficient data. The Amazon catastrophe was not unique. History is full of maps drawn to fill gaps, military plans built on assumed terrain, and disasters that followed when reality failed to match the documents. The survivors carried the map's failure in their bodies for the rest of their lives, the men who had trusted a paper mountain range and lost everything they marched with except their lives. The dead were memorialized, eventually their names on stone. The phantom mountains that killed them not mentioned anywhere on the monument. The inquiry produced new standards for cartographic verification and expedition planning reforms that would have prevented the catastrophe, implemented after the catastrophe had already happened. The Amazon's actual river system, the real geography the expedition needed, was mappable by anyone, who spent adequate time surveying the region before marching 5,000 men into it. Side by side, the two maps tell the complete story. One drawn by professional hand with incomplete data and institutional pressure, one verified by satellite. The difference between them is 5,000 lives. The Amazon today is navigated by researchers and explorers who carry verified geographic data, the same jungle, made survivable by the difference between fiction and fact on a map. The lesson of the Phantom Mountains is the foundation of every verification protocol in every professional field that deals with data that can kill people if it's wrong. The Amazon does not mark what it has taken. The same canopy that glows gold at sunset lies above the bones of 5,000 men who followed a map that was never true. The honest answer would have been a blank space on the map marked unknown. Unverified, but blank spaces on official maps were considered professional failures, and so mountains were drawn where there were none. This is the map, the mountains that didn't exist, the route that was never there, the river exit that was waiting on the other side of a pass that was made of paper and ink, and the institutional reluctance to say, I don't know.